Cierro, me voy a la llamada. Venga, hasta ahora. Coméntate si quieres. Hasta ahora. Chao, gracias. Good evening. Hello, guys. Hello, my friends. The stream is live, but we're not yet live. Good night and welcome everybody. I have here with me today my two very precious guests, Georg and Mats. So welcome, guys. Good night.
Hello, good night.
Yeah. So I guess you don't need very any big introduction, but if you can give a small introduction of yourselves for the stream, would be nice for anybody who doesn't live on the Legacy planet and doesn't know you. So can you start, Georg, please?
Oh yeah, sure. Thanks. So yeah, I'm Jörg. I live in Germany and I am 38 years right now. I'm playing Legacy about like 9 years for now, and played different decks in the past. So I also played with different archetypes, but now for like 3 years I am going with these Elvish or latest mid-range build. In the beginning, I was very skeptical about the Fiend Artisan builds, but after the printing of Orcish Bowmaster, I think it's the best way to play with the green and black deck like this. So, yeah. Nothing else to say.
Also, well, everybody knows, but you took the 2021. It was 2022 or 2021 Eternal Weekend. I don't remember now.
Yeah, if you mind the it was 21. So
2021. Yeah,
it was like 3 years ago about.
Yeah, and then the other guest for tonight will be Matt. Can you do a small introduction for yourself, please?
Yeah, my name is MatsOle, and I'm from Norway. I guess I'm kind of retired from Legacy or washed up, or I used to play quite a bit back in the day, and I still enjoy playing, especially green creature decks. So this is kind of up my alley.
Yeah. Okay, so the three of us, we are in the Reclaimer Discord, and we've been playing the deck for some time now. But I think we have some small difference on our takes, I would say, for the current deck. So I have here prepared. I downloaded the I would say, which are in my opinion the state of the art deck lists. So that would be I took Georg's latest finish. I took Rodney's finish for the qualifier. Diego's finish also. And I have also here with me Newton's latest build. So how about we go through, I guess Diego's and Rodney's are quite similar, so I will focus more on Diego's because, he finished second place. But if I would like to hear your thoughts on the lists and how you feel. Of course, I will have some topics prepared, but I think the main topic for tonight is probably going to be mocks or not mocks, and why, probably. So I want to start with you, Mats, because Jörg and I, we are staying in touch pretty close lately. We are trying to prepare Eternal Weekend, so we are having maybe weekly or bi-weekly meetings to share our thoughts. So I would say we are pretty much in tune. But I don't have two such big guests too often, so I would love to hear your opinions and how you interact with each other too.
Sure. On the mocks topic, I haven't played enough to be sure, but in theory, I like the mocks option because I think you can beat the decks where mocks is bad, maybe except control decks, fairly easily, and it really helps against some of the bad matchups like lands, some of the faster stomp decks, and against combo. So it's like you get slightly worse in grindy creature matchups, but that's kind of some of your best matchups. And I think you get worse versus control, but you can also go under them easier because you can kill them before they get their sweepers or set up their winning board state. So in theory, I like it, but I haven't been able to try it much.
Well, I have seen you have at least a few 5-0s with the mocks list, so I think that's more than most people can say regarding the mocks test. How about you, Jörg? What do you think on this first question?
Sure. So if we want to look at the list you are currently showing, so I think what is highlighting here is the change of the removal spell. So in the almost like for more than a year, we usually played with Snuff Out, but I think the metagame is a bit too black right now. So there are a lot of black creatures, and a lot of creatures you can't really destroy with the Snuff Out. And on the other hand, almost all of the problematic creatures in the metagame are already handled with the Dismember as well. So 1 mana, you can cast it for 1 mana, or you can cast it for 2 mana, and you have to pay less life than in opposite to the Snuff Out. And especially with the Mana Dogs, and especially with the Ignoble Hierarchs, you should be usually able to just cast it for like 2 mana and 2 life, and the life loss can also matter.
Yeah.
And the combo hate here is like the Mindbreak Trap. So I think since the Mind's Desire unban, Galactic was set in stone in the sideboard at least to just combat those combo decks. And regarding the Chromox decision, I would say it has a lot of advantages, as Mats already explained, that you can improve a lot of problematic matchups like Lance or Moonstompy, for example. So usually I have a lot of losses in the past weeks, especially to Magus of the Moon. And that's also a reason for me to just think about adding Dismember over Snuff Out.
Yeah, I think this is a good point.
More flexible.
Because I think it's possible they are linked, one and the other, because for example, Rodney and Diego both were off mocks, but one was on a Snuff Out, the other was not. Another interesting card that it's it's a common problem for both is Gadoctic. I think Newton on his latest list added the Cabal Pit, mainly focusing on Gadoctic, because the Snuff Outs cannot hit Gadoctic. So Dismember is also interesting. But again, back to the mocks portion, I don't know. I feel in the core of the deck, I feel like so we took two steps from the original list. So let me pull here for anybody who is not who doesn't know. We on the Reclaimer Discord we keep track of all the decks, all the deck changes. So any change that the deck is having through all the years, we should be here. Give me a moment. So it's a So it's a Google Drive file. Let me pull it on screen in one moment. Excuse me, guys. Here it is. Okay, so here you can see this is how the deck evolved for the last 2 years. So Newton releases let's say standard deck, or not standard but stable version, like if it was software. So he releases a stable version every month. So here you can see how the deck has been changing from month to month. Basically from month to month. So I would say there has been some changes. First, here you can see the delta of the changes, and one big change here was the loss of Glimpse, which I don't think is here anymore. You see also here the change from the Mana Dork, from the Accelerants to Mana Dorks, and the loss of the Vicio and Wirewood, right? The BFF. So I think we have been progressively losing card advantage, or the ability to generate card advantage. And Mox is like another step further in this direction. I feel we are playing more and more like a Stompy deck. So at least in my personal testing with the Mox, it's felt like like the deck is being more all in on the hard hand you are dealt. So how do you feel about that? Because this for me is a super interesting topic.
For me, I'm kind of used to playing the decks that you play depending on your starting hand. So for me, it feels fairly natural. But it's I would guess it also means your matchups feels more hyperpole, like the when you're losing harder, and when you're winning harder, if that makes sense.
Yeah, makes sense. More polarized, right? So your games are more polarized. Yeah.
And sometimes that can make some matchups feel worse than they actually are, because the games you lose feel so bad every time you lose them. So I think there's a mindset to playing decks that are more all in. That might be a change for some players, but I don't think it necessarily means it's better or worse in any regards.
Yeah. How about you, George? What do you think about this topic? How does the card advantage, and because playing mocks, we're paying a price, right? So how do you feel about this price we're paying, quote unquote price?
Yeah, so I have mixed feelings about the cards. Sure, there are always situations where you are able to just use the speed you get out of the card. Especially in pre-board games, I would say it's very useful to have the ability to just get rid of some useful cards, sometimes unuseful cards, sorry. So sometimes you draw the Atraxa, and if you pitch it into the Chromox, you get all the colors. And on the other hand, sometimes additional Fiend Artisans can also be used to just fix your mana. But on the other hand, sometimes I found it a bit hard to just evaluate which card I should imprint in the situation. And I also had a situation, it was a bit fringe, but the opponent started the game with a Swamp and a discard spell. It was a Thoughtseize. And then saw my hand. I had the Chromox in hand already. And I top decked Collector Oof. So this was, I thought, okay, it looks like Scam. Collector Oof is maybe just a useless card. And then I pitched the Collector Oof into the Mox to just play Fiend Artisan. It was a 1/1 only, so it was a bit dangerous to just play into the Bowmaster, but I didn't really had any other good plays. And then it turns out that the opponent played also a fetchland after the Thoughtseize, and then I saw that it's a complete other deck. So it was a Besiege the Mirror combo deck, and they played a couple of artifacts out. So it felt a bit strange to just pitch the best card in the matchup into the Mox, especially as it doesn't really interact good with the Mox. So after the Mox is on the battlefield and you play the Collector Roof, you can't really use the Mox anymore. So that was my biggest problem, to just evaluate the card you imprint into the Mox sometimes. Sure, there are also situations where it's very easy, so you can just pick the worst card. But if you aren't really knowing what you're playing against, then it's a bit hard, especially in the early turns.
Yeah.
So another big reason for me why I also opted to just cut the card again, to just replace it with Relands, was that we usually want to just have a really good top deck in the mid game. So if we are going to like turns 3 to 5, then it's very good to just top deck good cards you can play from the top of the deck. And Mox is usually like that card after turn 3, I would say. So it was a reason for me to just not play the card, but I can definitely see the advantages, especially against fast combo decks. It's good. So you can play like Thoughtseize and Elvish Reclaimer in the same turn, for example.
Yeah. The advantages against combo, they're clear, because it enables your biggest hate bear, which is Collectoroof. And also you can deploy your usual threats or just ramp plus your... So basically what in the past you would do in a 2-turn cycle, you can now condense in one single initial turn. So in this regard, Chromox is very good, and this is obvious. Also in the combo matchups, because the world we live in Magic Online, you usually know what you're playing against. So it's pretty easy. It's pretty common that you know what you're playing against, maybe because of the username or the history or whatever is happening. So it's, as you mentioned, is more common to know the correct pitch for a card. My next question for you, so this is clear, but my next question for you is, okay, so Chromox allows to play either two CMC1s or one CMC2. So it's not unheard of that you can pump out turn 1 Collector Roof. If you recognize the matchup and this is correct, it's very good. But how about Newton's Newton? I would say Newton, but I don't refer to Newton alone. I just want to refer to. So I'm calling it Newton's list, but I want to refer to the people playing Mox, and since most of people play Newton's list, that's how I'm calling it. So, but I'm not referring to him personally. So on Newton's list, you only have 2 Bowmasters, which is the next topic I want to talk, which is a very hot topic in my opinion. And the fact is that one of your best 2 drops, playing only 2 when played naturally, it's the most strong in a deck that is able to play turn 1. To me, it's weird because turn 1 Fiend Artisan, it doesn't really put you ahead. First, because you will be exposing 1 Toughness Artisan in a world of Bowmasters, and second, because you most likely you won't be able to, or only a couple of hands are able to activate it for a turn 2 Grist, right? So it's kind of hard. On this list is maybe easier because Newton is now running all the Endurance's main deck. So the Lotus Petal effect can happen if you have a Cradle in the equation. But also this also means, again, another sequence that requires you to lose another card. So in my mind, at the very least, a hand that contains Chromox should very rarely also use Endurance as a Lotus Petal, except from very specific matchups where you know exactly what's going on, because this would mean a turn 1 with the double pitch, right? If your play gets answered anyway, you would be very punished, severely punished. So I guess the next topic after all these talks, I'm sorry, what do you think about the Bowmaster count? Do you think 2 is correct? Would you play more, or no, you think 2 is totally right? So let's proceed in the same order. First Mats, then Jörg.
Before I answer that question, I would just like to do another point on Chromox, if that's okay.
Yes, absolutely. This is what we're for.
Because I was discussing with Newton that Chromox could also be a sideboard card. One of the problems before was that then you would have to play more lands main deck, and it's kind of using sideboard slots for something that isn't very flexible. But I also think it's a card that's very obvious in what matchup it's good in. So it's something I haven't been able to try, but I think it could also be a good sideboard card because it's very good against the decks where it's good, and it's also very obvious where you should slide it in and out, but you would probably need to play another land main deck.
Okay, I have some ideas and thoughts on this topic. This is a very good, interesting topic because this idea, it also came to my mind at some point, because you will basically be using, correct me if I'm wrong, just as a a card to speed up your deck, right?
Yeah, it's basically the thought behind it is against combo and against the prison decks, you want to be able to interact with them before they get to do their setup in the combo decks go off, or in the prison decks lock you down or out of the game. So it's just to get enough speeds to get to play the game.
Okay, I want to come back to this topic, but let's first talk about the. Let's finish off the Bowmaster count topic, and then we can come back to this because I really like this, and I have some ideas we can discuss between all of us. But yeah, so let's go ahead and discuss the Bowmasters.
In my mind, the Bowmaster is kind of a polarizing card as well, because it's very good in some matchups and it's fairly dead in other matchups, in the same way that Chromox is. And there's also a overlap in what matchups the cards are good in and what matchups they are bad in. So playing 4 Bowmasters and 2 Chromox would, in my mind, be giving up some matchups. So that's one of the reasons I like the two split. And I'm also not the biggest fan of Bowmaster to begin with. I recognize that it's very good in some spot. It's also a card that just alters the game, and I'm not sure that's something you want all the time.
Yeah, I agree that it's not. What you said, it's polarizing, and it's easily. I guess the best way to put it for me is it's easily recognizable if it's doing a good work or not in a specific game, right?
Yeah.
Okay. How about you, Jörg? How do you feel on Bowmaster?
I think it's one of the best creatures in the format, and we are able to just get use out of the card, especially because getting the creature, so the Orc token, is very useful for our deck. It's very good to start with if you start with the Mana Dog, and in your second turn you are able to resolve the Bowmaster, and if you add a Cradle to the board, you have 3 mana, and you can do Green Sun Zenith, for example, or play more creatures on the battlefield. And that feels a bit like the old or the older Elves versions, I would say, that you have like 4 creatures on the battlefield on turn 2, and that's really hard for interactive decks to interact with. So if you're playing against a control deck, you have a white board already, and especially if you have like Bowmaster and Fiend Artisan on the battlefield in combination with the Cradle. So they aren't really the best situations for the opponent because they have to handle so much things. So I think I really like that the Orcish Bowmasters add 2 creatures on the battlefield, and that's very useful for the GS Cradle. And on the other side, it's so useful with the Fiend Artisan because you have the ability to just sacrifice the token to get other creatures. And I really also like the chaining of the Bowmasters. It's very useful, especially against some matchups where they are able to handle the Bowmaster, for example, like Death Shadow or Scam. Usually they can destroy the Bowmaster with their own, and then if you have the Fiend Artisan on the battlefield, you can just get another one, and you can repeat it a lot of times the more Bowmasters you play. So I really like higher amount of Bowmasters, and in my opinion, 2 is a bit low for my understanding, but I would go like 3 Bowmasters at the moment, I assume so. Because I usually also want to naturally draw the card and not really need to search for with the Fiend Artisan. And if you're playing a higher amount of the card, then you're more likely to find it. But I'm also with Mats, there are a lot of matchups where the card is bad against. But I also like the combination. Sure, we are talking about that later probably, but I think if you play more Bowmasters, you are less likely to need to play the main deck removal anymore, especially because Bowmasters can also handle with the small creatures. And for the bigger creatures like the Murktide Regent, for example, you can get the wrist out of the deck. So I think the addition of more Bowmasters give a lot of utility to just make a bit more room free for other cards, and you don't really need to play the main deck removal anymore.
Yeah. Okay, I have some thoughts. First of all, so about what Matt said, that is one of the downside maybe of because it's obvious when it's good or slash bad. I want to say that that the Bowmaster being mana neutral with Cradle, I think this is a very good floor for our deck, because the fact that for 2 mana you put 2 bodies, it's not the worst, and it's good that it makes the first copy is very good because it makes the body. Second copy doesn't make the extract bodies on, so the value is lower. But usually for your critical mass of the natural order, you need 4 attackers, or just getting the extra, maybe just getting for 19 with 1 summon sick attacker. It's very good, and yeah, I think the base synergy with our deck is very high. Then about what you're talking about, the removal, it's true, but I also think that the format is evolving in a manner where everybody's trying to play around Bowmaster, because the card is so played. Then everybody or people are either reducing the cards that Bowmaster hits, or replacing it with others. Ourselves, we've been trying stuff on this regard with halflings, or maybe changing the numbers in the deck. But so I think this also reduces the upside of the literally being replacing removal. But it definitely, against the premier deck of the format, which is 10-point Legacy Delver, we still can hit Delver of Secrets and DRC before it gets Delirium in time, especially if we can curve it out in turn 2. So I think it's still quite good. What do you think, guys? About those, because I think 2, yeah, of course, the two bodies for 2 mana neutral for Cradle, bad in bad matchups, or maybe not bad, but maybe low impact. I can see it's been a better definition rather than bad, because playing creatures in our deck is rarely bad. I would say that it's much worse. Matt, here maybe you can comment if well, you can, I guess you will agree, but if you play with flash, the power of the card is much higher, and it can force the blue players, the blue sequencing of cantrips, the Sherrock cell has to play differently, right? Basically, any shell with the blue cantrips.
I kind of agree, and some decks, I'm not sure if they have to play different. Like, some combo decks can still play fairly similar, even if you have it, and that's one of my concerns with the card. But I think it's one of a few cards in this deck that make playing, what's a nice way of saying this? It makes playing against the deck trickier. So it's because you get a lot of new combat tricks by either killing your own dudes and growing artisan, and you just have more options, and you also tax the opponent's mind by what they're playing around at every time during the stages of the game. And I also think there are cards that makes the card better. Several of the lists you looked at had 3 Grists, which obviously makes the card better. You're playing Therapy the other day, that also makes the card better. So I think if you're going to play the full 4 amount, you probably want to try to take advantage of the card in situations where it isn't as strong as it could be, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so basically build the deck to use the resource that it creates, even when its main function, what I would say, is ping the opponent or ping the creatures or act as removal, is not accomplished, right? So maybe you can use the body for a therapy, or use the token for sack fodder for grist, or whatever, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe we need to build a little bit more around the card, but what I see is the format. If the format is adopt, so okay, so Delver is one of the fastest deck to adopt the good cards, right? I think you both will agree with me here. So when a good card is printed on a card that has a decent effect, Delver, being at least that when it's optimized, it probably has 1 or 2 flex slot max. It's been consistent at including the best cards fast and in numbers. When the same happened with DRC, the same happened with the iteration, the same happened now with Bowmaster. So my question is, if we are already on color, it's not the floor is decent in our deck. So why play 2 instead? Why the number? I mean, right now I'm interested on the number of copies in the list. Maybe 4 is too much, but
for me, it's one of the reasons I don't like it at times is it's taxing the black mana sources. I like to fetch forests a lot, even when we were playing several Stephats main. So it just forces you to fetch worse mana sources, which is one of the reasons I don't like it as much.
Mm-hmm.
And against combo, I feel you're supposed to get value from it because it's a flash creature that also punishes some of their cards, but it just halters the game. It doesn't actually finish the game. It just slows it down a lot of the times. And I don't like the play patterns against control, and I don't like the play patterns against combo. So it's, for me, mainly a deck slot that fights like very specific cards, but it's never bad. And I feel like you're supposed to find something better, but when it's good, it's almost always very good. And that's why I like the first copy. And I think the second copy is also almost always worth it. So, but beyond that, I don't see it as the best card in the format like you're describing it. I just see it as a very good card that doesn't do what I want it to do.
Yeah. Okay. So maybe it's trying to fix something that we're not. It's not so. I think how Newton usually puts it is not solving any specific problems that our deck currently has. Maybe that's the sentence you're looking for. Yeah.
Exactly.
This is possible, but for me, I think now the threats are either super premium, like a Married Latch, like a Big Murtide, like a Troll, like a reanimated creature from out of Reanimator, or very small, and they will go maybe wide or eat your feed, right? So I don't think CMC2 is maybe the top end of the fast creatures, because any threat that is 3 mana, it's probably coming already too late in Legacy. So I think how many of my Delver games develop usually is, okay, so maybe they just have a Bowmaster, or they play 2 Bowmasters or 3, they have maybe a 2/2 token, and between this and a little bit more of pressure, they put me on a corner. So I don't think it's true it doesn't end games on its own. It's like it's not like a whole breacher or an opposition agent, but it's also it's so lean. It's 2 mana, puts out of pressure, can it can deny a lot of mana. Also, like I'm sure you both have been in the situation when you will play the mirror or against a Bowmaster deck, and if you are on the draw and you play your Hierarch and you get your Hierarch Bowmaster turn 2, sorry. So on your turn 1 cycle, still it's so bad, right? Because they set you back a lot. So the ability to do that, I think this has something we need to respect. But like I can see your point that it's not that strong, but again, it's a 2 mana creature. If a 2 mana creature would end the game, it would probably get banned. What do you think, Jörg? What's your
Yeah, I also want to add to this discussion that I think the card really helps against the opponent's control decks. So usually one reason for me to just play the Reclaimer Elves list as long as possible was the ability, especially against decks like Jeskai Control. You were able to just create card advantage with Wirewood Symbiote and Elvish Visionary. You can draw multiple cards a turn. Okay, there was the or before the Bowmaster world, so after Bowmaster, I think that's not playable anymore. But now with this build, I think we are it's very problematic because we can't really create card advantage, except of the Christ. If you're able to just resolve Christ very early and you can create like 2 tokens with it, and after that it gets prismatic endings, you only have still like 2 1/1s, which doesn't help you to close the game. But the Bowmaster also helps with the additional body. So, and I also want to add to the discussion that even in the matchups where it doesn't really shines, it can sometimes help to just stop the bleeding. So sometimes if you're lucky enough against decks like Moonstompy or like Painter, they are playing like Fable of the Mirror Breaker and they are attacking with the Goblin token, and usually you don't want to trade one of your creatures with that. And with the Bowmaster, you're able to just handle even the Fable of the Mirror Breaker first, so they can't really draw the cards. And after that, you can also trade with the Goblin very easily, I would say. So I think the card advantage card brings really helps you in the grindier matchups where you really want the threats on the battlefield. And it's not really worse for them to just destroy one of your Orc tokens. And on the other hand, even in some matchups where you don't really kill one of the opponent's creatures, you are still able to play with this card, and you can do cool tricks with the card to just block creatures like Goblin Rebel Master or the
Troll. I really like to use the token as a sorry for the small interruption, like because the Troll has this like super menace where you need 3 creatures to block effective to be able to trade. I really like to maybe put the ping somewhere else and use the Bowmaster, the token, and something else to block and trade with the Troll, because the scam decks can only reanimate Trolls so many Trolls because because the way they bring it back is through reanimate, and they have to pay a high amount of life. So if you can pressure them a little bit early on, they probably can. You probably can reduce their reanimation amount to 2 or maybe just 3. So that's another mode I like of the card, but I don't know.
Okay, another thing I want to add, as you're showing the current list here, I think, in my opinion, the list has a bit like building problems or building faults, in my opinion at least. So, because I am the opinion that use your mana dorks to just enable good plays or better plays in the following turns. Sure, they are playing like 3 halflings with a list, so the additional Christ in the main deck makes sense to just play it uncounterable. But on the other hand, with the full amount of the Orcish Bowmasters, I can also think, or I believe that a higher amount of the Ignoble Hierarchs makes more sense to me to just be more able to play the Bowmasters early. So I'm not really sure why he opted to just play the split of 3 and 2. But what I'm seeing is that I don't really like the mix of the accelerators. So I would definitely prefer a higher amount of the ignoble hierarchs.
Yeah,
And I also
I agree.
think that the Caracas in the main deck, sure, it solves some problems against some specific decks, but on the other hand, not producing the green mana is very hard to justify. And I think, okay, that makes sense because in the sideboard there's no pithing needle. But I wanted to just tell my opinion about the mana dorks, and I think that's one of the most important things. You should use your mana dork and choose your mana dorks with in mind what your following turns would look like. And I also really don't like the possibility, because with a delighted halfling, you are not really able to cast the Fiend Artisan in the following turns. So that was one of the reasons why I also opted to go back to the Hierarchs.
Okay, so let's try to finish close the first topic, and we can move on the mana base later, because this is all the topics we are touching. I think, at least for us, that we are Cradle gamers, they are very interesting, and they are high points of discussion in the community right now. I think everybody has their thoughts on them. So to close on the Bowmaster, something I also like to do is chain Bowmasters. If the board state can maybe get stalled, or maybe I don't know, the grindier in the grindier matchups against Scan, for example, you leave off the top of your deck quite a lot, and our deck is quite good on those positions, because we have a search engine that can be on board on a Fiend Artisan, right? So even if we are left, if you are left only with the creatures on the board, our deck can pretty much still function. I would say maybe 80%. So I usually like to maybe do one Bowmaster, then another, eat the token, ping the stuff, so I can build a better board state. And maybe if they can't rip on a later turn, it will really tax them, right? They have to consider if they really want to pay maybe 3 life, or lose a 3/3, or maybe sometimes you just put the situations it creates for me is maybe you maybe put 1 damage on an opposing creature, and suddenly they cannot attack. Like if they have a 2/2 and you put 1 damage because they draw an extra card, maybe for a Fable or something like this, or a minor effect. I'm not talking of the dream scenario of the brainstorm, right, where you just straight up kill the creature. But if you put 1 damage, maybe they don't want to attack because you can block more effectively. So I think the card has a lot of potential. Maybe 4 is too much, but I think I'm more. I'd rather play 4 than 2, I guess. So maybe 3 is the best point.
Golden middle, we should say in Germany. So.
Yeah, because so probably 3. Yeah, the sweet spot. Okay, do you guys want to move on because I really want to go back to Matt's idea on the mocks in the sideboard. As he mentioned this, I was just thinking that maybe it's because usually you want to swap maybe Chrome Moxes for cards that are bad on the speedier matchups. So maybe we can add more lands that we can side out, maybe, if that makes any sense, Mats. I don't know, because for example, if you want, if you have a Caracas main deck, then you are willing to take the Caracas out against the spell combo, for example, where Chromox can be very good, and then you are swapping 1 mana base for another, but the second mana source, but the second mana source you can play it on turn 1. Basically, that could be one way to do it. So that's an idea. I'm really interested. Can you elaborate, or how would you build the deck, or do you want to talk about that?
I think if you want to play Chromox in the sideboard, you probably need at least 1 extra land, and it probably needs to be a spell land. I'm not really a fan of Caracas in the deck because I don't feel like it solves anything. It's usually kind of bad against the Dark Depths, in my opinion. So the main thing it fixes is some draws against Reanimator, and I'm not so sure it fixes those any longer either. So I would probably play something like a Cabal Pit, like another land that does something against the matchups where I don't want Chromox. So maybe some grindy land, or just something that makes my mana even better.
Yeah. Okay, let's take a look here. So I highlighted in purple Bowmasters and Chromox because we are the card. That's all the cards we are discussing. This is Newton's latest map.
I think if you were gonna do it the way I'm suggesting, you would probably also want to play without Chromox in some of the control matchups, because
No, absolutely, yeah. Because if you get your Chromox prismatic, then it's basically 2 for 1.
Yeah,
and it's a Stone Rain for 1, which is pretty devastating. Okay. Well, it's slight discussion about the therapy. I was playing therapy and I did pretty good. I did 3 trophies in 1 week with the therapy list, but now I'm not sure if the therapy belongs. So the deck was basically, let me just rebuild the list. It was 4 Hierarchs, 2 Kyrions, no Delighted, 2 Grests, and it was 22 lands. It had a double Bossade, Juno, Caracas, 22 lands, and then here go the therapies. The idea to run the therapies main deck is, or for me it was, okay, so I'm playing 4 Bowmasters, then okay, sorry, the list had only 2 Bayous. The idea was to better use the Bowmasters token. Hey, Romario. The Bowmaster tokens with the therapy, and also because you can. So I was able usually to do my main game plan without compromising. Like if I had a call therapy in my hand, I would just do my normal game plan. I didn't feel pressure to fire turn 1 because maybe you don't know what your opponent is playing or something similar, right? So you are not forced. But then when you have the certainty of what you're playing against, then the Cabal Therapy, as I discussed with Jorg, the Cabal Therapy becomes like a card, like basically like in the worst case becomes like a silence where if you identify what are you losing to on this turn or on the 2 turns, you just name this card and you will not lost to it. Not lost to it, sorry. So it worked pretty good, but it was very nice to have access to 6 discard spells without destroying the main deck too much. Also, the fact that I was only playing 2 allowed me to so it's basically two discard spells in 1. If you already know the matchup or you have some turn cycles have passed, you can probably name something meaningful or at least get a hit, right? So I don't say you will just name a triple Infernal Tutor, but maybe you just they just get something with the Stormforge, or the Delver player has burned 2 or 3 spells super fast, so you can read that there's a Murktide in their hand, or you only die to top deck, whatever, right? So it was okay. It was not the best. It was the best for me was having 6 discard spells in total in the sideboard. That was very good.
Yeah, and one of the main reasons, sorry, Nico, but I wanted to just add this to the notes you were explaining. But the main reason we tried this new tech out was that we were trying to find ways to improve the 4-color control matchup.
Yeah, this is
And
also
we were
true.
identifying that we had a lot of dead cards against them in game 1. And if you're drawing too much of your snuff outs and your collector ruse, it's probably too problematic to just have a good way to beat them in game 1, and especially because we don't really have very good sideboard cards against them. So we were trying to find ways to just interact with the control decks a bit more, and we were also had the opinion that the snuff outs are not that heavily needed in the main deck anymore, especially because there are a lot of black creatures in the format right now. And as you already explained, you're a bit like protected even against the tempo decks, because you're able to cast Seekable Therapy in like turn 3 to just name Murktide Region, for example. And also it was very important because it's a good source to get information about the opponent's hand. Even if the opponent doesn't play a combo deck, you get more information about the opponent's hand and can build a game plan to just play through it. And on the other hand, it also solves problems sometimes against problematic cards, like Fury, for example, can be problematic. And if there's no Chalice on the battlefield, you can name Fury. Sure, they are able to top deck the card later, but it's a good way to protect, and also you can always play it before you are casting the natural order. You can always name Force of Will, for example, to just be sure that your natural order resolves.
So this was what we thought. I want to hear your thoughts on this list, Mats, because I was doing pretty good with the list. But I opted to move on because I wanted to try more dorks and something different in the sideboard, because the Cabal Therapy was not terrible, but again Cabal Therapy has a really good card if you can name even if you can give maybe even medium names, because just the having the information from your opponent, it's so valuable in Legacy, right? But before moving on, so what do you think about this list and the concept behind Cabal Therapy and the 4 arcs?
Therapy kind of fills the same role that Mesmeric Theme did when I played it. It's like a card you can play for insurance. Is often not dead. So it's like in some spots you waste time getting the fiend. In this case, you would lose some resources by casting the therapy, but sometimes the value you get from just the information is more important than the resources you spent getting that information.
So this was true for me at least, but maybe it's because I'm not that good of a player and I cannot read the board states and hands that good. Probably a better player who reads hands better can already play around this stuff. But
I think no matter how good you are at reading the board states, there will always be board states where information is more important than whatever is happening, because there haven't been played enough cards to give you the information you actually need. So the information is more valuable than, say, a card in your hand.
Sure. So I often discuss with. So let's following the topic. It's kind of hard to keep a straight order of topics. I'm adding here in the side here some notes. So if you want to add anything, we can come back or we can discuss. So my goal maybe is discuss a few more things, maybe for maybe 15-20 minutes, and then maybe we can build a list together between the three of us and maybe play some games. Maybe not a full league because it will be too late, but maybe just some games. So
if you if I could add a topic, I would
Of course.
add the latest change Newton did was putting more endurance as main, and in the Bowmaster discussion, one of the upside was having a flash creature. It works as a combo track, but it doesn't fill, in my mind, the role to plug the right holes. Endurance does some of the same things Bowmaster do. It doesn't remove the dorks, but it fixes some holes in your game one against especially graveyard-focused combo decks. It also is a flash creature. How do you compare the two cards?
Bowmaster and Endurance.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point like if we're talking comparison. I guess Endurance. I see. I see. I kind of touched this topic already, how I feel about it, but I think in my mind, the fact that Endurance is CMC2, CMC3, and Bowmaster is 2, this is a big difference for us. Because even if you're playing Chrome Mox, you're not gonna be able to turn 2 the Endurance, right? So the step up in the cost is really relevant, in my opinion, at least. But I agree, it fills some kind of the same role, at least when we're talking blocking on combat tricks. On this regard, I agree, but it has Endurance is I don't know. I don't think it really has the same impact on the sequencing Bowmaster can have. So Bowmaster, even if Bowmaster doesn't directly kill the player, for example, against control, I want to say control, but against any player who is trying to sequence cantrips, trying to look for something specific, they put similar amount of pressure. Endurance puts 3 power, Bowmaster puts 2 power and a ping. So I am not sure. It's true that the Endurance fixes the graveyard matchup for us game 1, which means we have 2 shots with all the post board tools to win them, and it's obvious the graveyard matchups will get better. But I don't know if it's a card to play 4 of main deck. I don't think. Correct me if I'm wrong, guys, but I don't think I've seen any deck in Legacy play 4 main deck Endurances. Until now, of course, Newton just 5-0'd with 4 Endurance in the main deck. So that's my point. What do you think, York, about the comparison? Because I think it's legit to ask this question.
I think it's more or less like the same from a deck building perspective. So if you are willing to add so much slots for the Endurances, you give up some other matchups. So I think one reason to have a good range of different creatures and a toolbox is to just be able to get the right creatures in the right situation where you really need them. And I can definitely see the advantages of the Endurances. Obviously, it's very good against the graveyard decks. And a lot of times you are just able to beat them if you have multiple of your Endurances and you're able to pitch any useless other cards. So mainly the main goal is to not lose the game there. But on the other hand, I also think that it's a bit too much if you add too many of the Endurances to the main deck, because it's more or less like the same with the Bowmasters. There are a lot of matchups where it's very good against, but if it's really bad, it's really bad, and it doesn't really make sense to spend 3 mana because you have more better options to do with your mana. But on the other hand, it's always useful. Sometimes you can use it also for a free pitch, and especially you can create an additional mana with a Lotus Petal mode. If you pitch another green card from your hand you can't really use, and that can be very useful to cast Natural Order a bit earlier than normal. So I can definitely see the advantages. But in my opinion, I would also go with the 3 endurances instead of the full playset, because especially with the combination of Once Upon a Time, there's also a good chance to find them when you need to get the endurances. And on the other hand, you don't really want to overload your hand with the useless card you can't really use in the matchup. So I think it makes more sense to play more than one endurance, because also you can use it on your own. So sometimes now with the Fiend Artisan builds, it's a bit more tricky because you reset your Fiend Artisans then, and they are only like 1/1s. But especially against decks like Scam, you can also prevent them from reanimating any of your good creatures from the graveyard.
Probably stopping the scam play is not the best idea, but of course stopping the reanimation of the troll is very, very relevant. Very, very relevant. Something I want to point out here is let's see how many decks is Endurance good against the main deck, because Scam is such a popular deck right now, and they play, as you know, Reanimate. I think Reanimator, look at this. So it's still quite played. Of course, this is a very big event, and on this very big event. So this is for anybody who doesn't know, this is data from the legacy data collection group. So I think I have it here. Yeah. So I will just share in the chat the link. So if anybody wants to help to collect data, we are always looking for more people playing challenges to help us collect data. Sorry for the plug, but we really, really need the people helping. So these are this is the information from this event, and you can see here. I think these 2 decks win percentages, play percentages, and basically they are inversely correlated because Emir Scam is playing Reanimate. Reanimator its matchup is bad, right? Its matchup is quite bad. And this is quite interesting because I see 0 copies of MatsOle spells, and it was almost 264 player event. 0 copies of MatsOle spells, which I would say is the matchup, one of our worst matchups, game 1. Probably Reanimator is it's quite bad also game 1, but I don't really see any other deck where I would want the Endurance main deck. Correct me if I'm wrong. Well,
Doomsday. Really agree that. Yeah, exactly. So Doomsday is a very good example.
I will also say Delver decks are usually a place where Endurance is one of your best draws.
Which one? Sorry?
Against Delver decks.
Yeah, sure. But not because of the graveyard portion or the Lotus Petal portion, right? It's just because I guess you want to be casting the card, not evoking it. That's maybe the point. But right. This is at least to be considered.
And Painter, you should add a red Painter, in my opinion, as well, because it's double protection. You can counter the ability to get back artifacts from the graveyard, and also with the unearthed creature they are playing, and on top of that, it's also protection, at least for 1 turn, if they are able to grandstone you. So I think it makes a lot of sense. To get it as an additional protection against Red Painter.
Sometimes you can play your Fiend Artisan and they'll Painter or grindstone you, and then you flash in your Endurance upkeep and get to...
you get to leave one more turn, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, so if you have a Fiend Artisan, you can usually get like either a Grist or a Oof or something to get several turns.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, so let's see how the pod decks performed on this challenge. You can see, Rook Cascade is not it. So interestingly, on this event, look, the 4-color control was the most played deck. I guess we can put Shadow as if it was a tempo deck, probably. It would be safe to say such a thing. Grixis Delver also. So this is kind of weird because in my mind, these 2 percentages, you should be adding them. And maybe even the Dimir Scam also. So of course, the Scam is not a pure tempo deck, but I think the the tempo players are this one, right? And they are the Grixis, Shadow, and Dimir players. Those are the tempo players.
Yeah, and Rugdell was also on row 20.
Yeah, only 1%, but it's true.
And Blue Red Delver on row 25.
Okay. So yeah. So this is probably the matchups where Endurance main deck is affecting. But against the tempo decks, the Bowmasters are quite good also, right? Because if you can even it's not that common that they can turn on the Delirium this super fast of the DRC, and Delver can always not flip. And I think Delver players nowadays at least they want to play the DRC first because it filters. So they want to play first the DRC, then cast the rest of their spells so they can trigger it multiple times. So I don't think the True 1 Delver Go is such a popular play anymore. Of course, Delver is still played to some capacity, but it's not the. If you have both threats, I think you're going to play the DRC first, right? I think it's almost.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would maybe say that they're very similar in those matchups, but I would probably have Endurance in the Dimir Scam, Rug, and Blue Red Delver, and I would probably rather have the Bowmasters versus Shadow and Grixis Delver.
Yeah, because maybe Grixis also plays their own Bowmasters, and your Bowmaster. Yeah, this is probably correct. Of course, the four endurance variant has the best, right? So we are not this list from Newton. So he has some number of Bowmasters and all the and full playset of endurances. So I think it's safe to say this list would be probably the best positioned against tempo game 1 amongst all the ones we've seen. I would say arguably I rather have an endurance in my hand rather than a snuff out, because probably an endurance means you can delay the Morktide enough, or maybe even make a double block, or who knows.
Sometimes you even get a read that lets you like double time walk them if you evoke it at the right place.
Yeah. Although I every time I ask Newton if this play is correct, he always tells me he 90% of the time thinks evoking endurance in the tempo matchup is bad, because endurance is so, you want to resolve it, is so strong in the matchup. Yeah, so let's go back to the data forum another minute. Anything else we want to see here?
You could maybe highlight the Painter at row 19.
Yeah. I don't think it's super relevant against Painter, but I guess, yeah, maybe getting the extra turn. Hello. Getting the extra turn it's okay. Yeah, the rest 0.0%. This is one pilot. So
what about the lens matchup, Inigo? So I think it's sometimes very important, not always, but usually or often enough they are able to just cast Life from the Loam, and if you're able to break up the Life from the Loam chain at least for like 1 or 2 turns, it can make a big difference, especially if they are able to get Wasteland out of their graveyard. So I usually also like to just pitch the Endurance in response to the Life from the Loam, because I don't really want them to chain the Wastelands out of the graveyard. And that delays at least for like 1 or 2 turns until they find another one. So I think
No,
that's very important.
I agree. I think one of the key moments when our lands matchup got improved a lot was when we finally decided or adopted the sideboard plan of adding all the endurances. Of course, now on Newton's current build, he already has all the endurances in the main. But yeah, the just if they, I often think about this matchup as of how both hands. For the person in the chat, I will just get to this topic in a moment because it's interesting for me. Sorry guys, let me just get it, write it down here because it's super interesting. We will talk about this in a minute. But just to finish on endurance and lands, I cannot see lands for a reason right now. Okay, here it is. So for the lands matchup, if your hand contains graveyard interaction and they keep a loam-oriented hand, you're probably winning because their deck doesn't change the course that easily. If the hand dictates they have to go for a loam line, and they kept this hand, they probably they have to go for this. They cannot go for anything else. So this is probably another matchup that is highly impacted in the main. Also where Snuff Out was bad, right? So Snuff Out was previously dead, and so it's just like being pre-boarded, basically.
Yes. And it's also the double protection, the same like with the Painter matchup, because you can use the Endurance to block the Merit Lage if they get it early.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of opportunities if they are not able to tabernacle us or wasteland us into oblivion, and we are able to just try to get multiple endurances, like 2 endurances, and then with the swing back you can usually sometimes even raise the Merit Lage or just find,
or at least you get the Atraxa for the block, right? You get one more block. You can maybe sometimes chain. Something it has come up to me is I can maybe get the evening, Robert. I can maybe tutor for 1 endurance, maybe make a block, and then keep maybe tutoring for the number 2 in the deck. If we're talking of the old builds where you only have access to 2. So especially on the latest land spells where they're not running CGD step in deck, or either sideboard probably, you are secure to have 2 blocks. So this is pretty good. And of course, the matchups where are most improved are the ones where Snuff Out was previously boarded out. So yeah, of course. I was telling Newton the other day, for some matchups you are like almost pre-boarded, right? Because, for example, Doomsday, I see another matchup that improves a lot. Delver, we already touched the topic of Delver in 1. But yeah, I think 4 is probably too much. Okay, so do you guys want to keep building the list and explore the Chrome in the sideboard? This is really interests me. Or we want to touch on any other topics? Somebody in the chat just mentioned the Agatha Soul Cauldron. I want to touch this topic for just at the very least briefly. I know Newton tested the card, but I believe, if I'm not mistaken, he tested the card as a one-off and in a flex slot when he had it in the time. And the card, I think when you're testing a card, and I think Newton will agree, if you have only one copy, it's very hard for you to get the correct feel of the card, because playing only one copy, you will see it just so rarely. It's hard for the card to come up in the relevant matchups. So it's hard to judge it, right? So I'm playing Jugmoth in Modern, and I have to say that the card, in combination with the persist creatures and the ballista, it can create some game-winning combos on its own. But the lines that impress me the most of Agatha are any line that involves grist. So do you think this is a card we should explore, or how do you guys feel about this card? Or have you seen any videos? Or I don't think any of you guys play Modern currently, but I'm sure you are keeping up to date with the spoilers, right? So the card is pretty powerful. I'm gonna bring it on screen right now if any of you is not familiar with the card, but I would love to hear your opinions of the card. Nice.
I think we briefly spoke about this earlier. I think the problem with the card in my mind is that you need to spend too many card slots for it to be a plan you can build around. And if you're cutting cards, you probably need to cut the top end cards, which probably means you're cutting natural orders. And I don't see this being better than natural order. So that's my logic behind it not doing what I wanted to do.
Yeah, so you think that okay, so the Cauldron provides a very strong resiliency. I think we discussed this already, because it basically doesn't care for normal removal / counters, and it provides also some level of insurance against graveyard, right? So I would say
it's a bit like unlicensed hearse, I would say. So the use of the ability is completely different, but I think unlicensed hearse is like a similar card. You can use it also as an artifact for 2 mana. But I would also agree to Mats' opinion. So we don't really have the chance to just add the card to the deck because it requires too many changes, and I don't really see the benefit of the card over other payout cards. So we have Green Sun Zenith, we have Once Upon a Time, we have Natural Order, and I would say like Natural Order or Once Upon a Time is like a card we should replace with those effects. But on the other hand, it's a bit like too situational for me.
Okay,
and
that's fair.
It depends. It also depends on the matchup. So I could see it as a one-off in the sideboard, but on the other hand, I don't think that it changes that much for the matchups where it could be good against, and there are more efficient sideboard cards probably, which have a better way to interact with the opponent's graveyard in a different way. So, for example, like Fairy Macabre is much more efficient if you want it as a graveyard, anti-graveyard card. But I can see the utility, and yeah, the card pool in Legacy is a bit different than in Modern, so I'm not really familiar with the Modern metagame at the moment, but I played it in the past a couple of years ago when I was starting Legacy, so it was a completely different world back then, but I don't really have a strong opinion on the card, at least in our shell. So
Okay.
maybe there could
I
be a way
just wanted to
build a
bring
shell.
it out because I've seen the card do very crazy things. You can just imagine how strong it is to have your orc army produce tokens, or basically any creature in your board become an effective grist or a fiend artisan, right? But I think from both of your opinions, I think the best comparison so far is what you said, Unlicensed Heroes, because it's the same mana cost, so it's already a little bit problematic. It's not a turn 1 play. It would be very different if it was 1 mana, because it would mean we can start interacting against graveyard turn 1. But yeah, probably 2 mana is maybe too much. Okay, so let's move aside from the Agatha's topic. Let's focus on building a list to play at least 1 or 2 matches tonight, if you guys want. I'm really into Matt's suggestion of the Chrome Moxes in the sideboard. So I think we agreed. You guys said, well, we didn't agree basically because everybody has its own opinion. But maybe 3 Bowmasters, 3 Endurances is a good starting point for the list. I believe the 4th Endurance probably has to go on the side. How do you feel about this the removal suite, Mats? Because I know York's opinion because we've been talking about it. But I don't really know how you feel about snuff out in the current metagame.
I basically haven't played enough recently, but in my opinion, Snuff Out still deals with most of the threats I'm worried about. There are some exceptions, and I think maybe the biggest question right now is the troll. How important is it to be able to kill the troll?
Mm-hmm.
I don't really care about most of the other black creatures, because Bowmasters I'm not using removal on regardless.
Yeah, we agree.
And so it's the troll and it's the position agent. Those are basically the 2 creatures that matters that are black in my opinion.
Yeah. Galactic is also something relevant because for the latest list I was testing, so this is the list I was building until today before our stream. I'm not sure about the numbers, but I wanted some split of the removal. I wanted some out to Galactic and a Galactic opposition agent and troll, and Dismember hits all those. With the upside also that it also hits Magus and other stuff. The problem with Snuff Out is doesn't hit. It's not hitting Galactic, but so then Newton suggested adding back again Cabal Pit. The problem is Cabal, in my opinion, is the Cabal Pit doesn't really cleanly answer. Of course, it doesn't answer Troll at all, and it doesn't really answer Opposition Agent because you will not have, or maybe you will not know, but it would be kind of hard for you to have Threshold early on. And typically how you get Opposition Agent is they ritual it out, right? So they want to, they maybe try to get your first fetch land with it. So, and those decks also typically play Dothy. So Dothy Voidwalker. So it would be very common for you to get stuck on your graveyard count early on in the game. Dothy is also already quite effective against that because it doesn't allow our Reclaimers to go big or our Artisan to go big, which would otherwise win the mid-range battles, right, when they present medium threats. So I don't think Cabal Pit is really good against I feel like it's a trap specifically against Opposition Agent and the decks where Opposition Agent is being played. So that's another plus for Dismember. Well, Dismember is hitting Galactic, Opposition, and also Troll and other stuff. Of course, we are missing the Morgtide, but we also touched this topic with Jorg on our meeting earlier this week. The Delvers. So let's go again back to this because I think this is a little bit outdated. The Delver lists are the Tempo players, are starting to test again Rook Delver because of the beans and because of the Druid. So I think some percentage of the Grixis and Shadow players will move back to the Rock Delver. It looks to me like a very, very strong shell for Tempo. It's been very strong in the past. And with the beans up the beanstalk, Submerge, and the Druid is probably going back again. And why I mentioned this is because this list, because they are already playing green, they are splitting their top end from Murktide to some amount of Hooting Mandrills, and Hooting Mandrills is a card that Dismember can handle. So that's in my opinion, and in York, I think York will agree because, yeah, as I said at the beginning of the stream, we are in touch lately a lot. So that is another point in favor of this member.
How do you feel about the 2 cards in the Stompy matchups and the Death and Taxes matchup?
Well, I guess that, yeah, this is a good question. I was not bringing in Snuff Out on the Stompy matchup until we talked together on this topic, but I was liking to bring in a few copies on the Stompy matchup, specifically to hit the Under Mountain, I believe it's the name, right? Under Mountain Adventurer, the red initiative card, because I feel the matchup is pretty good right now. When we added the artisans on the list, this was a breakpoint for us on this matchup, and then we added again the second copy. Then the second copy of it. Well, I guess Endurance we have always been on moving between 1-2 copies since we added it. But yeah, I think the moment we added the 4 artisans and we more or less learned to play around Fury, so just deploy Fiend once it would be either out of Fury range or maybe that they have to use all their point of damage on the artisan and they cannot trade the whole board for it. That matchup got better, but I do like to board maybe 2 removals for the matchup because so if you're trying to combat the prison angle of the deck, you probably will miss the initiative angle. So Snuff Out is a very clean answer to Under Mountain. I want to stress that I was not bringing it in the past, and after talking to you and Newton, I agreed that was at least the way to go for me, and it has worked pretty good since.
But if you could choose in those matchups, would you rather draw a Snuff Out or a Dismember? Considering like Stompy could play
Dismember, I think it's I'm pretty sure because okay. So first of all, Dismember. Well, I guess do you want to answer, George? Because I think we have, so you can have.
Yeah, sure. So I am the same opinion. So I think Dismember has a lot of advantages, especially as you're able to cast it off a forest. And if you're able to get the opportunity to fetch, you can just fetch for the forest and be prepared for the future Blood Moons or Magus of the Moons. And also being able to handle Magus of the Moon can be essential. So I know that especially with the Chromox version, it's useful that you have the opportunity to just create black or green mana with the Chromox. But on the other hand, freeing up the Gear's Cradle is very important to cast the Nature Order oftentimes. So I think it has the best coverage of all creatures from the opponent. So you can just kill all of the opponent's threats with the Dismember. You can also decide if you want to pay 4 life or maybe 2 life and spend 2 mana. If you're able to produce black, at least. On the other hand, there are situations where the tempo can matter. And if you're able to cast Snuff Out for free and present a threat on the board, you are ahead on the board and have more options in the next turn. But I found that a lot of the Stompy players are aggressively mulliganing to moon effects against our shell, at least before the Chromox versions. That was mostly critical for us. So because with a high fetchland amount of like 10 or 9 fetchlands, it's most likely that we begin the game with a fetchland instead of a forest. And I really like the opportunity to just get the basic land with the fetchland, and still be able to cast the removal and not need to play into the moon effect.
Yeah.
Interesting, because my thought is I would rather have out because it's easier to win the games where you're on the draw. Because because being on the draw, they get to keep their exploration hands with just Rabble Master, or I don't remember what the other creature that does basically the same thing as called, but they get to keep those hands, especially if they have a Fury. Whereas Snuff Out gives you more opportunities to combat those hands because you actually have a way to catch up tempo, whereas Dismember really doesn't in my mind. So I think I would rather have Snuff Out in that matchup, even though it's dead in some instances.
Yeah. So you say that that is like a gamble, right? Like if they keep a hand that they're trying to win the fast game with a super fast initiative creature or multiple Rebel Masters, then Snuff Out, and you happen to have Snuff Out, then you probably win those games, and you accept the games where they maybe turn one Blood Moon you or Magus of the Moon, right?
Yeah, because you can board in several Snuff Outs on the draw, whereas you take some out when you're on the play again. So you have a less chance of having the dead card when you're on the play because you get to play more games where you're on the play, and you have more opportunities to catch up on the games where they're able to play the other game plan.
Yeah. So basically, you have more. Yeah, I understand what you mean. Like you can deny them their proactivity because they will use up a lot of their resources to put up the threat early, and you answer their threat with a single card.
Yeah, and you get to be able to catch up on tempo, whereas because you also answer the threat with one card with Dismember, it's just that you don't get to develop your board in the same time.
You cannot do your turn one play. You are using your turn one to answer their turn one. So it's
so it's basically impossible to win those games because you never catch up.
It's possible. That's why I'm thinking maybe the correct approach is maybe a mix of the removals. But I think what Jörg said is also has some merit, and the aspect of this member being so so it gets basically the only thing it's missing is a big Murtide, right? So it's so good. But the tempo aspect of the Snuff Out is, for me at least, if it's what it's most attractive, because, well, I guess it's no secret that the Green White Devs matchup is, for example, pretty hard for our deck, and being able to answer their turn one Reclaimer consistently while being able to play yours. For me, this is the equivalent of them having a Chrome Mox, right? Because, for example, for their deck, what it requires from their deck to answer our Reclaimer and play their own is play Mox, lose a land, play land, have 2 mana, plow your Reclaimer, or keep 1 mana up for a plow, play their own Reclaimer. While for us, we can do all the same effect to the board with one less card, right? What, 2 less cards? Yeah. So the tempo, the it's not a secret that Snuff Out is super good. It's a
also
the tempo advantage it creates. It's very good.
Yeah. Very, also, Knight of the Reliquary is another card, but it's corner cases where this member sometimes doesn't kill it. But
which one?
It's Knight of the Reliquary.
Oh, sure. But my preferred way to kill knights is through graveyard interaction.
Yeah. it's not a big deal. It's just there are some corner cases where Snuff Out is extremely good in against Knight as well.
Yeah.
So Mats asked earlier about the Death in Texas matchup, and
True.
I also
I think that matchup has secretly become pretty bad for us. It's the more we move from the combo E, the less combo E we become, the harder it is to combat them, because black white Death and Taxes is super grindy, and it's very good on their doing their thing.
Yeah, but here you also have different ways to play out the game. So especially if Mother of Runes is evolved, so you have to be very efficiently, and then Snuff Out is the right call to just answer the card. If you aren't able to answer the Mother of Runes, neither of your removal spells work, mostly for the rest of the game. That's an advantage of the Snuff Out. On the other side, you need to get the Bayou to enable it, so you are a bit more soft to the mana denial of them. And on the other hand, this member has the advantage that you're able to just kill the Caldra Complete, which can be problematic sometimes, or at least present.
I totally forgot about this. It's true.
So I think that's a bit, I would say it's even. So Snuff Out has tempo advantages. If you're able to just use it for free, it's very good to answer the Mother of Runes or even the Stoneforge. But on the other hand, if they don't have the Mother of Runes, you can even wait for them to just use the Stoneforge and then kill the Germ token with the Dismember. So, and this also even gives you the tempo advantage, because they need to spend 2 mana to activate the Stoneforge, but you can still just kill that for 1 mana. So that can be an advantage. But on the other hand, mana is very low often enough against Death and Taxes. If they are mana denying us, usually they take out the Talia out of their deck after sideboarding. But in game 1, they could still have it, and if you choose to play the Dismember, there can be situations where you don't want to cast the mana, spend the mana to cast it. But that could be the same situation with the Snuff Out. So if Mana Denial is evolved, then it's hard to cast the removal spell either way. But both of the removal spells have the advantages and disadvantages.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think either is. So it's not obvious. It's not obvious, because we would have come to the final conclusion much earlier. So the answer is not trivial, and I think it also answers. So some cards are. The answer, it's also metagame dependent, as if for some metagames you would want maybe full playset of Snuff Outs, like for example when we were playing on the Super Initiative meta, where we needed I think on that time we were playing even up to 6 removal spells, if I'm correct. So it's, yeah, I think it depends on the meta. But for example, the Caldra Complete fact I didn't remember, and that's pretty cool.
Part of the reason I was asking is, so if you considered Dismember better in both matchups, it makes sense that you're playing Dismember, whereas I consider Snuff Out the better card against Red Stumpy. It makes sense that I would rather have Snuff Out. I actually think Dismember is better against Death and Taxes. But I think it's a matchup that's easier to win without the removal spell, whereas
yeah, because we have natural order, right? You can just win with it.
Yeah, whereas some of the hands Red Stumpy has, you need to interact with them.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. So for this list, guys, how would you? Because I really like that idea of playing Chrome Mox in the side. Also, I don't have the list right now, but Kai today played a list. It was pretty interesting. It had multiple sagas in the main, and they played so something we have never explored on this shell is playing more than one saga, and maybe two. So Kai today was testing. I think after the stream he proposed to play another like one Chrome Mox, one other saga target main, and I think this is also pretty interesting. But he was playing 3 sagas. I think 3 sagas is too much. So yeah. Okay. So let's close up this member. So how do you guys feel about the split? First, the number. How many removals do you think we need? So I will just to start the discussion. I think if we play 2 Grist, we need 4 in total, and if we play 3 Grist, we could be good with 3. What do you guys think about those numbers?
I would guess if you're able to play the main deck without removal, you could probably get away with playing 3 regardless. Would be my assumption.
Okay. But what about the Grist number to complement the removal suit? Would you maybe increase the number of Grist or stay on 2?
I think if you're playing 3 Bowmasters, maybe playing 3 Grist makes sense. I'm not sure. You could also play the Grist as one of the removal spells sideboard. It's not really a removal spell in some matchups, but it's also a card against control.
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
this it has been done in the past, and for the Chrome Mox list, I do think Chrome Mox and Grist go very well together because having your Chrome Mox being able to tap for both green and black is super good on our deck. So it's like basically you can play with a Bayou in front of Blood Moon or Wasteland, so that's pretty good.
right now you're also playing 22 lands, so the option could either be to play 1 Chrome Mox, or you might have to play another land.
Yeah, I switched to this view because I really wanted to see how many initial green initial sources we had available. 14, maybe it's. I guess it's stock 14, right? We usually play one more fetch.
Did you probably accidentally edit Cabal Pit to the main deck now, or was it intentional?
No, it was intentional because as we were discussing, it probably will come out for the faster matchups because Cabal Pit is not an anti-combo card. So for the super fast, so Matt said, and I agree that the cards that the Chrome Mox would be replacing should be like utility lands in the main deck. It's possible that it's a saga, could be a saga also. I'm not sure, but this is an option I keep in my mind.
So I'm really sure about that. If we are replacing the Chrome Mox, we shouldn't really make our mana base worse than before. So I don't really like the idea to add more non-color lands. So I think there are a lot of utility lands we could play. So, and I think that Cabal Pit, would be the worst option, or one of the worst options, because it's a similar logic. Like
we already discussed. I'm sorry, it was just for me. It was just as a placeholder because it was already here in my sideboard. So, okay, so let's see. The natural order package. Okay, I have some more thoughts I want to discuss with you, and I wanted to bring it up to with Newton. So before we move on with this list, I don't really want to take too much time, but I'm really having a good time. So I would use you guys as long as I can. On Newton's list, I think. Okay, so this list is so explosive that I think I would maybe consider playing a Progenitus, because so many decks cannot win against a turn 2 Progenitus, while the Atraxa is much more easily answered, right? Even raised, I would say. What do you think? Because 2 Chrome Mox and 4 Endurance on Lotus Petal mode, that really increases the amount of turn 2s Natural Order can be cast. I'm not saying Progenitus in the main deck, but maybe yes in the 75. And this is again back to our metagame problems.
Color control.
Yeah, it would be a turn 2 Progenitus. It's pretty hard to answer, if not by probably a natural terminus, or maybe they need to brainstorm to put it on top. Do you think?
My first thought is, if you're I think Atraxa beats basically anything that doesn't have Swords of Plowshares almost the same amount as Progenitus would do, if not equal or more. So the main thing you're playing Progenitus for would then be combo, and then it's probably some better green creature you could play. It's just my...
Do you think Atraxa beats Control?
No, I'm saying...
No,
that would,
because I know Newton thinks like this. I know Newton. But
I think it beats Control at least the same amount of times Progenitus beats it, if not more. I would rather have Atraxa against Control than Progenitus.
Okay, that's fair. I think you. You just said Atraxa does it's not that good against Plow deck, and Plows are the signature card of Control, I would say. But I can see what you mean, because you can maybe push a Natural Order the turn after an Atraxa resolves.
When I say it's bad against Plow decks, I mean Lament compared to Progenitus. It's like the in my mind, one of the few things Progenitus does better. In almost any other light, I would rather have Atraxa.
Okay.
Mainly go with Mats there in this statement, because the card advantage you get out of Atraxa is so helpful against most of the matchups, and even if they are able to handle it, as you mentioned, you can usually follow up with the Green Sun Zenith for Praetor Behemoth, or just cast another Natural Order the next turn. And I'm not really sure if Progenitus even beats the ring decks at all, because the One Ring also protects the opponent from a Progenitus. And with this, you only have one big creature on the battlefield. Sure, they have to handle it somehow later, but with the protection of the ring, they should be usually able to get a bit time, and also a lot of Control decks still play Dress Down. So, I'm not really sure. I think the card advantage you get off Atraxa is much stronger than the unkillable creature. And sure, Progenitus can be 2-turn clock, whereas Atraxa usually is like a 3-turn clock, or in combination with other creatures, you can also swing with 2 attacks. But I think that Atraxa is more solid against most other matchups, and I think the only matchup where Progenitus is a bit better is Lance, because you're having a very fast creature and clock with the Progenitus. They can't really interact with it, and in this situation where you play against Lance, they can bounce you Atraxa, but I don't think that Progenitus is the right call, and also should be like a waste of the sideboard slot. If you want to play it in the sideboard, and I wouldn't even play it in the main deck at all.
I want to share with you guys. I shared it on the chat earlier today, but I want to share with you this list. It's I want to credit the deck builder. It's out of Bailey, BCS 8995 on MTGO. He's an amazing deck builder, and I would recommend following him. So let me just give him a shout out. He really plays really good Magic, and he's an insane deck builder. So I want just to mention that our deck felt pretty bad against this deck with so many exile effects, the beans and stuff. And because you mentioned the ring a few times when we were discussing control matchup, it almost feels like some number of control decks are moving away from the ring. So I'm not really sure if this is the trend. I would need to confirm maybe on an upcoming challenge and see the replays by myself to analyze this thing I'm talking about. But for example, Progenitus would be, for example, very good against a deck like this.
I agree, but this deck also is built to prey upon decks like ours, where it's very weak against cards like the land card that makes zombies. Something like that would just destroy this deck, because it can't finish games and it can't deal with those sorts of effects. So it's like a very polarizing deck that is supposed to prey on decks that play creatures, and that's all our deck does. So of course this kind of eats our deck up
alive. Yeah. Yeah, that's how it felt, the matchup. Okay. Yeah. I just wanted to show this deck because yeah, so you guys can look out for it. The matchup felt terrible.
Yeah, and it should, because if it can't beat decks like ours, this deck can't function, because it's not built to deal with some of the other decks in the metagame. So it needs to have some buys, and our deck is a buy.
Okay. So yeah, I guess for the challenge meta, the four color Uro control is not really making any, and it shouldn't, right? But it's just 4 color Uro is kind of wine term. There are also 5 color controls probably in this category, like the one Arcan was playing with the Mox Diamond, and he was playing 4-5 colors. So yeah, this archetype is probably too broad in my opinion. Okay, so let's move forward with the list. What do you guys suggest we add, change, or experiment with for this session? Or I'm really liking to hear your thoughts. I think you, Mats, I think you are very good on when you're thinking about your sideboard plans, and you have probably very innovative approaches that well, I don't want to speak for anybody else, but at least I wouldn't, it's not intuitive for me to bring Snuff out against a deck like Moonstompy, but we agree that it works. So I think you have you're helping a lot in the decks development and decks and when we are designing the sideboard plans. And I think Jörg, you are a good deck builder also, and you are good in attacking certain metagames. Like I remember. I don't know if you were already back from your I would say, I want to say retirement, but from your downtime, Mats. But there was a time before Artisan, before Jörg adopted Artisan, when he was playing like a Glimpse Reclaimer, which is it was in the middle version, and he was, I think he was like 8 back-to-back top 8s in challenges, and yes, he was just at the time he was just reading the metagame so good that we had a very good read on what to hedge, and of course he's a great player.
Thank you, Nico. But one thing we didn't mention at all already was you told about the challenge meta in the beginning of the latest discussion.
Mhm.
And I think it's a good way to, if you want to look at a metagame and you want to tweak the deck for a specific metagame, you need to know what looks the metagame like and what do you want to beat with it. So I think there are so many different approaches, and I don't think that there's only one approach to build a deck. And I really think that it's really important to know and expect so which decks you are expecting to play against. So if you play in a challenge, I would say in this current metagame, you should absolutely be prepared for all of the tempo decks. Death Shadow, Grixis Tempo, and Blue-Black Scam are probably like about at least 1/3 of the metagame of the full event. So it's essential for me to just have a clear game plan against them, have a good card choices, to just be prepared and be optimally pre-boarded in game one. It really helps. So there's a lot of way to just win on game one, and then if you're on the draw on game two, everything can happen, and especially if they're playing the right sideboard cards. So knowing how the metagame should look like, knowing which decks have been successful in the latest weeks, that is also very helpful because you can take very important notes, especially out of the data collection sheets. And the best example for that, if you look at the data collection sheets, you see that Reanimator had a very hard time in the last 4 weeks. So the win rate of the deck was very low. And that for sure has to do with the uptrend of the scam packages. So a lot of players play scam. They play like 4 Reanimates in the main deck, and they play discard spells, and they play Force of Will. So I don't think that Reanimator really want to play against those decks. And the deck was kicked out a bit out of the metagame. And this led that to the point where players trimmed or removed some anti-graveyard cards from the sideboard. So you have to jump on the train if you're seeing a trend like this, that you should at least reduce the amount of anti-graveyard cards, for example. But then after a couple of weeks, and I think we can already notice that in the latest challenges, a couple of graveyard players like Dredge and Reanimator came back. So, and that should have to do with the less amount of graveyard hate people are playing. And it's very important that you see those trends and these changes out of the metagame. At least in challenges, it's a bit
I remember when we were doing the project. I don't know if I have it here. Do you remember last year when we were tracking all the metagame data from the from all the events? Let me see if I can find it.
And the big difference, if you see, and mainly playing leagues, in leagues you can play against anything. So you don't really know. You can play against Oops All Spells twice a league. And another time you play twice against Sneak and Show, even if Sneak and Show is usually bad positioned in the format because it has a hard time against those tempo decks. And another time you can play like 3 times against the 4-color control deck, because a lot of league players usually get those deck lists from the challenge events, and if some very known players were successful and had very good results with their lists, they are posting the lists and other players just copy them. So in leagues you can play against anything, but in the challenges you have a more clear metagame, and it's easier, much easier to just be prepared for those events, because it's very likely that if you're playing like a legacy challenge or a proto qualifier, which has like 7 or 8 rounds, it's very likely that you play against a tempo deck twice or 3
I think
times.
in order to catch on these bounces of the meta, I think we should get back to work and probably do this amazing document that we were doing in 2022. So I don't know if you have I have ever shown you these maths, but Jog and I, we were keeping all the challenges from every month in a document, and we're taking all the data from every event, and then we built this tool that we could, for example, we had this super big matrix with all the matchups to know how from the last 9 events, which is barely roughly a month, we could see all the results from all the matchups and a yearly view of the metagame shifts. So, for example, what George just mentioned is really interesting because, for example, if for example Reanimator is having it's still decently positioned metagame wise, it's 5%, even though the win rate is the worst amongst the top decks, like by far. There's a decent chance that anti graveyard cards are removed, and then suddenly this win rate becomes like 50 something again, right? I think that's what you meant, right, George? Because people are taking this read that the Reanimator is playing very poorly in the last events. Maybe they would play it less respect, but then the one-trick ponies of Reanimator will keep playing the deck. It will still be played by good pilots, and the win rate will rise a lot.
Yeah, and on top of that, the Reanimators usually can create different sideboard plans over time. So if they are knowing how the decks are playing and how much interaction they have, there are a lot of plan Bs they are able to playing, and usually it takes a couple of weeks that they get a good feeling for which plan Bs are the best. So they can have removal for the anti-graveyard hate, they can have show and tell, they can have a mid-range plan with mid-range creatures they cast out of Dark Ritual. So there is always the opportunity to just surprise the opponent, and then it could lead to situations where Reanimator players get better win percentages again. But usually it isn't really wrong to just switch a couple of cards from the sideboard, and sometimes you can also get more interaction of the graveyard. But on the other hand, as I mentioned, they always have those plan Bs, and it doesn't really help you if you have a Leyline of the Void and an Endurance, and they just cast turn 2 show and tell into Atraxa.
I remember you. Yeah, I remember you are always. It never feels good when you bring all your anti graveyard cards and then they just Magus of the Moon you or show and tell you an Archon turn 1. It feels super bad. Okay. I'm loving this, by the way, guys. I'm really having a good time. I hope you guys are also having a good time. How would you so let's try to finish a working list, and even if we don't play too much, maybe we can test something for this week. So if we want to hedge on, so let's say the top of the meta right now, it should be, I would say, for a big event, right? It should be probably 4-color tempo variant scam, if you want to count it outside of tempo. I'm not in any particular order, right? So 4-color tempo scam, and maybe some amount of storm, right? Some amount of storm deserves respect because of Besiege, or maybe the mono black.
From your list, it looked like there were quite a lot of Stumpy decks as well. White red Stumpy, and the red Stumpy, and black Stumpy. Obviously, black Stumpy needs other cards to.
Yeah, but for example, this list, because this data is gathered, let's say, by hand, right, Mats? So
yeah,
I'm not sure. Like,
I'm getting.
It's very possible that some black Stumpy should be Storm, right? Like some. What I mean is maybe this percentage and this and probably are probably it can be. They can get confused some fair amount of the time.
No. So if I see correctly, that should be the event beginning of September where I was top 8ing. And so for this event, at least I can say that I had a great amount of replays for this event. So, and I can also assure that Stompy decks are Stompy decks and Storm decks are the decks with a combo finish. And the Black Stompy decks usually also play Besiege the Mirror, but are not heavily relying on the combo part. So they usually have like this was the list from the European Legacy Masters from the winners deck list.
Shout out to the ELM. Also, we are here Sahar in the chat, so shout out to her as well.
Hi Sahar, how are you? So for this part, I can say that the deck recognition should usually work. But as Matt said, I would also say that Stompy decks are always around in the metagame, and it usually shifts a bit depending on how the preferences are, on how good prints were released recently. Another deck which is usually on the map is like 8cast. And 8cast also usually have a good combo matchup in general, I would say. It's a bit like a nightmare to play against them because they have Chalice and Forces.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, I know a good 8cast player which recently switched to a list with less Chalices. So the deck usually has the problem that it had to be adapted to be playable despite Bowmaster in the metagame. So there are ways to change the deck a bit. That is also usually a good
Lance and 8cast are the decks with the biggest win rates, fairly represented, right? Because maybe one copy is not even represented. Even 3 copies is quite slow. Like assuming maybe 1 copy of this is mislabeled, maybe only 1. So this would leave Black Saga Storm only for 2 pilots, and I believe 1 top 8'd. So 8cast and lands having very, very respectable win rates.
And usually you always have those Dark Depths decks as well. So I think Green White Depths and Dance are always presenting like between 5 and 10% of a metagame in those events. Especially now because they are ignoring the Orcish Bowmasters of the opponent. And usually, for example, Lance has a very good benefit because it doesn't really care about Grief and the reanimation package at all. So I think that could be a good benefit. And Depths usually, I'm not really sure how their chances against those scam decks, but I think they also have some draws the scam deck has really problems with. So it's good to have those decks in the format because it's like scissor, paper, and rock. So if you say like the tempo decks are those scissor decks, then there are those rock decks, like us, for example.
Like us.
We are trying to beat those decks, and then those paper decks are trying to beat all other decks which are beating those scissor decks. And I think that's
that's a good analogy. I like it. I really like it. Okay, so let's say we need to focus on play. Then we need to be as rocky as we can, right? So we should make our tempo matchup like super loop-sided, right? Like try to be the best anti-tempo deck that we can be. Our shell is already pretty good, but we have like 5, potentially 6 cards to bring in. So on this configuration, we have 4 removals, 1 endurance. I'm not sure about the Terra Sunder. I haven't really played a lot with the card. I don't have any big experience. I know Newton. He's been liking the card is very flexible, but I think casting it for 4 mana is pretty crazy, if you ask me.
It's probably not a card that's best versus tempo.
Yeah, but I mean overall, right? Casting a kill spell for 4 mana, it's
Yeah, I think it's like you said, it's a very flexible card. I also liked it when I played it because it fills a lot of roles, and it's fairly easy to have it not be, or have it be your 60th card in a lot of matchups because it's better than a lot of the other options.
yeah, you can see that. So if we do it like this, for example, how would you? Because from this list, okay, we're missing 2 slots, and I think Mats, you said we need to play at least 1 more land, and York too, right? Because you both mentioned that we want to keep the main deck mana base functional, even if we are not including the Moxes. So
my suggestion would either be to play 1 land and 1 Mox. So move 1 of the Mox's main and play 1 in the side. Or the other option is to play, or I guess there are 3 options: play 22 lands and be suboptimal against wasteland decks, especially tempo decks, because they kill your creature and your mana sources. So that's maybe not the best option. So then you either have to play 2 lands, which seems like you're kind of wasting a sideboard slot. So I think I would maybe opt for the 1-1 split on Chromoxes, 1 main, 1 sideboard.
yeah, I could see that. So that I could see that, but then a friend during the European Legacy Masters in Bologna, a friend of mine was registered a list with only 1 Chrome Mox because he wanted to. His name on Discord is Chencho. He really wanted to avoid the scenario where you draw double Chrome Mox.
Yeah.
Because he really thought it was instantly mulligan, or I'm mulligan. So he played 1 only in the main, and so he was okay if he drew it. He would take the extra mana, the extra speed, and if he wouldn't draw it, then that's fine because he would be sure that he would never draw the second copy. So exactly. I think maybe that's the way to go when we can have 1-1. But are you still okay having the second one in the sideboard for the combo matchups or not?
I still think I like the second one because it's like you said, you reduce the chances of drawing 2, but there are still some matchups where you're willing to take some hands that have to, because the speed matters more than the card quality. Like against some combo decks, you either play something on turn 2 that matters, or you're dead.
Yeah, even sometimes even turn 1.
Yeah. So in those matchups, you're willing to take the extra dead card. Against Prison, you're willing to take the extra dead card sometimes, because if you don't make a play, you fall too far behind on tempo, so the extra card doesn't matter because you never get to play it. Or against lands, you're just so far behind their wasteland lock that things don't matter. So I still think it makes sense to have the second copy, but I'm open to
Yeah.
other
So I
suggestions.
I saw Kai's league today, and he played some sagas. I think that's another way to further increase, because I think okay, so I think I don't hate Mox as a card, but the problem is I don't think we are getting that much out of it. And for example, Saga is a way to get more to make the Chromox check more boxes, right? Because it's or it can be you have a reason to cast it without imprinting, because it's making your constructs bigger. If the matchup, if you have something where you don't want a specific card, you have maybe your second Once Upon a Time, you can imprint that, and it will still produce mana after the third chapter of the saga. So that's something I thought I had passed through, but after watching Kai's stream today, I think it's something I want to revisit. How do you both guys feel about Saga? I know Jorg didn't really play a lot, because if I'm not mistaken, Jorg, you were on kind of a break when we were back on Saga. And Mats, I think you liked the Saga when we were playing. When we were tinkering with the Saga package, and we ended up playing only one needle, right?
Yeah, I even played it during the time when there were no targets.
True.
And I think I'm in the box where I kind of liked it better with 0 targets than having 1 target. And I'm not sure if Chromox makes Saga better. I think it's almost the opposite, because it's like Saga is a slow card, whereas Chromox is a fast card. So
Okay, that makes
I don't
sense.
think they interact. Uh,
They respond to different needs, right?
yeah, correct.
Yeah. Okay. That makes
So
sense.
my opinion about Saga, I with me it was the opposite. So I played it only after the addition of Chromox was added to the deck, and it was the same reasoning. So I thought that it could be good to just have the opportunity to get something out of the deck. And I also thought that, especially if you're in the situations where you are able to use Saga, spend the mana to create those constructs, and be able to search from your deck, it could be good to just thin out your deck and take those useless Chromoxes out of the decks that you don't draw it in the future turns.
Yeah. So you
But I
mean
would
if the
say
deck, if the game is going slow, then you can. Yeah. So,
But
but
on the
then
other hand, I noticed that, in my opinion, Saga was a bit too slow in general. So usually it's good to have mana sinks in your deck, but with our latest lists, we usually are able to just activate Fiend Artisan, for example. And another reason for me to not play Saga, because I see Saga as a utility land which can create card advantage, which can be very helpful against removal heavy decks. And as we are able to play Bowmaster now, because in the past the card wasn't present, but now as we are able to play Bowmaster, we also have another card advantage engine besides of the Grist. And I didn't really feel the need to just activate the mana to just create those construct tokens. I don't see a big difference between the construct tokens if they are like 1/1 or 2/2 or 3/3. They are not presenting such problematic threats for the opponents in most of the cases. So, and I also don't really like to get the disadvantage of sacrificing a land, because with Saga you need to sacrifice a land unless you're able to convert it with an Elvish Reclaimer. But I played with about like 3 leagues with this list, and it never came up that I was able to just convert the Saga into another land.
Yeah, you mean on the third chapter, rotate it out, right?
Short. Exactly. I wasn't able to. I was sometimes one land short, and yeah, the Chromox doesn't really accomplish anything special in the late game, except of sometimes you can Green Sun Scene it for Greater Hoof Beamers in rare occasions. So in general, I think the mana base gets worse if you're playing the Saga, and it's more important for me to have a stable mana base. So I can definitely see to add Saga as an additional card or threat, but I wouldn't include it to the mana base. So if we are talking about adding a mana or a land to the deck, I would definitely prefer a land which also produces green mana and helps us, especially in the early game.
Okay.
I also think the curve is higher than when you used to play Saga, so there are some harder to reach the play pattern where you are able to keep 2 mana open because you have more cards that cost more.
Yeah. Okay. So, so do you want to try the? I'm not really sold on the Chromox one. One in the main, one in the side. I think it's either. So I think it's either none, both main or both side, because I don't think we are like with one in the main deck. You are not fully using the this speed this speed benefit, and but your mana is getting taxed anyway, right? So I think it's better to keep it one way or another. So I I don't really like this in the middle states. I don't know how to better explain it. York, I mean, wait. Let me. I want to ask about how does York feel about the sideboard mocks or the mocks approach at all. I'm really interested on the mocks in the side because I think maybe this is a different way to tackle the combo matchups. But I want to hear your take.
So yeah, I think we can add another aspect to the discussion about the Chromox because in general I have a bit of doubt that we really need to use multiple mana over multiple turns. So I think there is sometimes a way that we can just benefit, and Mats already explained that it's usually the case in the Stompede matchups, especially in the tempo matchups, we usually are able to play them out. But in the Stompy matchups, we need to keep up on speed. And then I ask myself, do we really need to use the mana we get out of the Chromox multiple times? Or is there maybe a world where we can just live with to add a card which has a one-time effect? And 2 cards come to my mind at this point would be either Lotus Petal or Aerial Spirit Guide.
Mm-hmm.
So that is a question I would like to give to Mats as well, because when I played the Chromox, usually I had like 1 or 2 useful activations out of it. And I think the card you invest, the additional card you need to invest into that effect could be some of a disadvantage. And other cards like Lotus Petal or Elvish Spirit Guide, I'm sure there are also some other options, could also be a consideration in my opinion.
I think my best way to answer that would be all try to talk why I think it's better in one matchup, and then after that, I'll try to explain why I think it means it's better in all matchups. And the matchup where I think it matters that it's Chromox and not Lotus Petal is in the matchups like the Prison decks, because it's you regain tempo every turn you're able to have it out. So if you have a Fiend Artist in hand, it will matter every turn. If you have against lands, it could mean you get to keep the temp or the pressure up against Tabernacle. And against combo, I'm not sure the extra card you are able to retain actually matters, because either you have enough to stop them or you don't. So I don't know if you actually the card advantage matters in most of the combo matchups. So since I think it could be better in some matchups like lands and prison, it's probably better overall because it doesn't really matter in the other matchups, would be my response.
I really like your sentence that we win tempo every turn. I think that makes a lot of sense. In the past, I will refer to the document. In the past, when the last time we added Elvish Spirit Guide, it was during the mono red domination era. It was a very bad time for us because we didn't have the matchup figured out on these builds. Did we have Snuff Out already? Yes, but we were running between 2 and 4 Snuff Outs. So for the 2 versions that run Elvish Spirit Guide, we only run 2 Snuff Outs. And probably 0 in the main.
My guess would have been
yeah,
in
0 in
that
the
era.
main. So this was the beginning. This was the beginning when we were adopting Snuff Out. This is why I love this document, because you can recall what was happening on this point of time. So on this time, the Stomping matchup was not fully. It was not. I would say the sideboarding approach was not as clear as it's now. We were mostly banking on the endurances to do the heavy work of the of trading, and it was just the beginning of the adoption of the Fiend Artisan.
But Nico, another thing I would like to point out, especially if we are looking at the card Elvish Spirit Guide. So, sure, I understand that having additional mana each turn gives you an advantage over the rest of the game. But I can also see situations where it can be very useful to have a trick like the Elvish Spirit Guide.
The hidden mana, right?
Two things come to my mind would be either you're able to cast an Orcish Bowmaster even if the opponent doesn't expect it at that point, and cast like a Brainstorm into 1 open mana or into 1 open black mana. And the other point would be like the surprise activations of the Elvish Reclaimer, where you can respond to the Wastelands probably, or even in graveyard situations where you are able to just activate the Reclaimer to get the Bojuka Bog. Maybe that could be some Dreamworld scenarios, but I can definitely see those situations which can helpful, and especially the reason why I mentioned Elvish Spirit Guide was because it's also an additional creature. In rare occasions you can also, probably you won't do it, but maybe you can also cast it if you don't have any other place. You get an additional creature on the battlefield which you can use with the Fiend Artisan or sacrifice for Christ. And it's also, okay, it's an elf creature, you can use it with the Allosaurus Shepherd, so there are some synergies with the rest of our deck. And also, maybe the deck plays completely different, but there was also a Cloudpost list recently, which were playing 4 Every Spirit Guides in the main deck, and they have some similar tricks like ourselves. So I can definitely see the advantages of the constant acceleration you get out of the mocks, but on the other hand, sometimes you are forced to aggressively mulligan, and then the amount of cards you have available are not that high, and then you need to pitch very good cards to get the card imprinted into the Chromox, and that was also one of the reasons why I didn't really like the card, because sometimes the investment of the card can also have an impact over the game, because you don't have that much pressure against those opponents. So even if you start with the Dreamland scenario that you cast Collector Roof on turn 1, then you are down on cards, and then it's similar like from a Stompy deck. They are starting with, let's say, a land and Every Spirit Guide and Lotus Petal, for example. Then they traded all of their resources away. And often enough, combo decks usually can handle those hate bear creatures. And if you're not able to put much pressure on the opponent, then the one hate bear creature can't be enough to beat them. So I think sometimes, especially in post-bot situations, the card quantity can matter a bit more in opposite to the pre-board scenarios.
It can matter more post-board, you say?
Yeah, I would say because of the interaction the opponent brings in. Usually.
Okay, because the game slows down.
Yeah, exactly. So if you're playing like the Epic Storm, for example, they usually have like Abrupt Decay or Bounce spells into in their sideboard, and then they're bringing in those Bounce spells and the Abrupt Decays. Some of the combo decks opted in the past to play Dress Down, for example.
Yes.
So they are usually able to answer those problematic permanents. And if we are forced to just spend all of our resources just to present the permanent, which gets handled 2 turns later, then we don't have enough cards to do anything more. So the card disadvantage is sometimes a problem, from my opinion. But maybe overall, Chromox is the best way to accelerate. But I wanted to bring in the point that there are alternatives to that card.
Yeah.
And especially Lotus Petal, for example, which also creates a mana of our choice, and also has the advantage that you, if you get Atraxa from the Nature Order, you can also cast it for free and use it as an additional resource.
There are certainly spots where Chromox costing you the extra card is a problem. I just feel especially against the Stompy decks and the land prison decks, having the mana not being temporary actually matters. And I think exploiting with cards like Petal and Spirit Guide just doesn't give you enough tempo a lot of the time. And since if that assumption is correct, I also think then it means it's the effect you get in the store matchups is pretty free compared.
I think what you I think I it's true. Okay, so let me answer. Let me put out my opinion here. For example, so York says post board the matchups get slower, and I agree. But we are also we are also counteracting the fact that the speed of the game is being reduced by trying to go faster ourselves, and this is something beneficial, because if the opponent is bringing in more sideboard cards to be more interactive with us, and we are trying to finish the game faster, this is probably a good something good for us. And the other thing that you guys are mentioning is the temporary mana of the Chromox versus the hidden faster mana of the Elvis Spirit Guide, while being less stressful for us. I think here I am with Mats, because on these combo matchups, Newton often says, and I agree with him, that it's all about the threat, not threat, the density of the anti-combo cards, of the density of the cards that matter in the matchup. For example, that's why we are trying to overload on cards that are good on the specific matchup. Like, for example, I don't really care if I have to pitch the second hierarch to the Mox if I can maybe go turn 1 Collector Roof. I know it's an extreme scenario, but for example, in the same manner, if I can turn 1 Reclaimer to protect from the graveyard and turn 1 Thoughtseize on the same turn, then it's good, right? Even if we have to pitch something. I don't know if I made my point, but the thing is, as the same as when we were evaluating Chromox in the main deck, the bad cards or the less impactful cards are more evident on the combo games than in other pairings, because combo decks are usually super dedicated with for one plan, or maybe one main planner and a secondary plan. So it's easier. They are easier to combat. That's I don't know if you guys understood what I meant.
Yeah, and those combo decks usually also have those situations, and it's very important, in my opinion, to still have a clear game plan against combo decks. So if you're only responding on their game plan, then sometimes, especially if they are playing with tutor effects or with cantrips, the discard spells aren't even enough to stop their game plan, because they are always able to top deck. Especially decks like Doomsday, for example, they can top deck their one single card and then going off next turn. It's important to have an own way to win the game. So the best draws against those combo decks are that you have an interaction piece in form of a discard spell. Sometimes a second one can be helpful, but sometimes it's not that good to cast a discard spell in the second turn again, because you slow yourself so much down if you only cast these discard spells. And a fast natural order kill is sometimes also very helpful against those combo decks. As you mentioned, those combo decks are bringing in a lot of more responsive cards out of the sideboard for game 2 and 3. And then sometimes it's just possible to cast Natural Order on turn 3. And sometimes it works that you don't really need some interaction against them, especially if you're on the play. So yeah, Natural Order can also be a good way to just beat those combo decks. But the acceleration really helps to just be able to cast relevant cards before you die, and especially with the discard spells into the threats. So can definitely see that there are some situations where the acceleration is important, and if you're able to just keep the 6-7 card hand, then I think Chromox is very strong because you
Yeah.
usually have
Yeah.
one worst card you don't need in the situation. But as more you are mulliganing, and usually you are forced against some combo decks to mulligan, and so more you mulliganing, the worse the Chromox gets. So usually you can put it on the bottom then, but on the other hand, you just gave up the speed you usually wanted out of the card. So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah, I remember now when Mats brought the topic of the Chromox in the sideboard. I think he suggested it on the chat some weeks before. I think the Newton's answer was, correct me if I'm wrong, Mats, that he didn't feel like the speed was a big enough reason to use up a sideboard slot. But I'm not. I'm yeah. It's so hard to do the deck building part. I'm pretty excited to be able to to be able to share my thoughts openly with you guys because you are both such an amazing players and deck builders. But this deck is quite complex, and any decision we take, we are giving percentage points in the opposite direction, right? If that is worth anything. So I don't know. I don't know. It's already a little bit late. We already are in for 2 hours and 15 minutes. So, do you guys want to schedule another meeting similar to this one, and maybe we can continue the discussion, deck building, or maybe just play a list, or how do you want to proceed going forward?
So for now, I would suggest, especially because we are trying to find an additional land we could add to the deck for more than 30 minutes now. There are different approaches. So in the past, I sometimes added an additional basic land to just be more resilient to the Blood Moon effect, because it's kind of annoying for me to play against those decks and not be able to just play Magic. So usually if I'm able to play Magic with all the experience you got over the time, then you have a lot of more ways to be successful. But if you're not able to play any cards, you can't beat the opponents. So that could be an approach. And there are also other utility lands that come to my mind, especially Boseiju Who Endures is one of my favorite cards because I really like the flexibility of the card. It can help you in difficult situations, and would generally treat it like in basic land because it doesn't really have a downside. Sure, it's a legendary land. You can't play it multiples, but having outs in random situations can be very helpful. And what I really like is sometimes it's very good to just answer the opponent's Urza Saga. Sure, it's not the best way to handle the card, especially because they get another land. But now also with the Leyline Binding being a card in these control decks, you can catch them by surprise in the end step. For example, you can destroy a Leyline Binding and get Chris back on the battlefield. Or even Bowmaster can be if it's locked under the Leyline Binding. So there aren't that many problematic artifacts right now anymore. So in the past, people played like Ensnaring Bridges and so on. But I really like the flexibility out of the Boseiju. And you can still answer Merit Lage and other problematic lands like Tabernacle with it. So I think it's a safe addition to the deck. At least I would play at least one of it.
Yeah, I really like my list. My list usually go with 2 Boseijus. In this latest list, I tried only one because I was mainly King Caracas. But yeah, I think the Boseiju is I really like Boseiju. I think it helps my play, and many pilots trust the net decking process too much, and they just see that the most the Newton's latest list and the most successful players, like the Sakura, for example, who plays a lot of challenges lately. He never he rarely registers Boseijus. So I think there's yesterday, I think, no, the day before yesterday, I just Boseijud Ali when he was trying to transform for Marit Ledge. So I think the just saying that the top players will not do it is just sometimes they just do it. So thank you for the gifted Ku.
I also think Boseiju is most of the time a better Caracas in this deck, because the main target you want to Caracas is Might Large, and I think it's too easy to play around Caracas, and it's really hard to play around Boseiju in that regard. And it also taps for green, which matters quite a bit more than being slightly more efficient at removing the creature.
Yeah. Okay, so let's go back to this. So we have 22 lands. Do we agree on 22 lands? We still have one room in the main deck. So what do you think we could add in this last slot?
I think it either needs to be a land or something that's a 1-drop, like a Kryn Ranger, a Mana Dork. If you're not playing the land, it probably has to be a land.
How about you, Jörg?
Yeah, I think 23 lands I was very happy with in the latest events I played. So it has a bit downside that it can happen that you flood sometimes, but I think with those amount of lands, there is a high chance that you really are able to start with an initial mana source, and especially now with the addition of the Deckbuilding Ranger, I think there is it's tempting to just remove a land from the deck because you don't really need that much lands anymore if you're playing the Deckbuilding Ranger, so you can absolutely operate on like one land and a mana dork. But on the other hand, I think it's absolutely necessary that you have those stable mana sources in the beginning of the game, and sometimes it's also very helpful to have enough initial mana sources because, especially after mulliganing, you need to keep hands with Once Upon a Time and just hope that you find the initial mana source. So usually I take those hands, especially if I have also the Geo's Cradle in hand, but I don't really want to mulligan those hands.
So maybe one more Mana Dork? Or something in between. So you think
we have 3 different options.
Yeah.
From my perspective here, we have 3 different valid options in this situation. Either what I really like is to play the second Elazar Shepherd because I really value the unfair aspect because you're able to just ignore opponents' counterspells and Chalice of the Voids. That could be an option. The second option could be the Force Endurance in the main deck to also have an additional sideboard slot, especially now because we are talking about the addition of the Chromox in the sideboard. Then the sideboard slots are a bit more valuable and it's lopsided, but there are enough situations where we want this configuration.
Yeah, I don't hate it because some weakness I think there exists on the list with Chromox and Endurance in the main deck is you have too many pitch cards. It's not that you have to play it. You're not obligated to play it on the evoke mode, but then you have too many cards that. So if your initial hand already contained a Chromox and you already decided to pitch a card, then it's probably too hard for you to make the the to decide on pitching and endurance later on, because you will be already on -2 cards for that game.
Yeah, that makes sense. So,
what do you think about this, Matt? So this way we would have all the benefits from the full playset of the endurances, and we can switch to a much faster mode post board. I don't know if the Terrasander is the card to go, but probably.
I think it makes sense because one of the reasons I wanted to play the Mox main was if you play 23 lands, you eat a sideboard slot. So you kind of playing the 23rd land loses you a sideboard slot. So that was kind of the reason I wanted to move the Mox main. So I would still have 23 mana sources, not lose the sideboard slots, but playing the endurance main also keeps the sideboard slot. So in that sense, and
also sense. It can be. It also we are also on the mode with the pitch with the. It's possible to use it on the Bloodlust Petal mode, right? Okay, so we finally come to a main deck list. So just quickly over the sideboard, I think so let's slowly do this. The Thoughtseize are locked. The Force of Vigors are locked. I don't think we have any discussion here. Chrome Ox is where we were discussing for almost 3 hours, so I will keep them in the sideboard probably. Needles, I would think they are locked. How do you feel? I think they have been very good for me.
I think I want
no discussion. I think 2 is a good number. York?
Totally agree.
Okay. Terrasander is questionable still. Sideboard, removal. Do you think it's worth trying this to snuff to these members? How do you feel about it?
So from my perspective, I think it can make sense to try this out, because especially there are also some matchups where you don't really want that much removal, but you want some amount of removal. For example, against the scam matchup or Death Shadow, for example, it can be okay to have more outs to the troll. So there you bring in just those 2 dismembers to be able to handle the troll or Death Shadow, for example, if it's small enough. But you don't always want to bring in 4 removal spells, because this would mean that you have to change your main core of the deck. So I think the split can make sense. And there are also a couple of matchups where you want all of the removal, but that could be a downside, that you somehow find the wrong removal in the wrong situation. So that's always the disadvantage to split the removal. But I think
so I think we agree, right? Because so in some matchups, I don't think I want to give up on the snuff out completely. From our discussion today, I think the three of us agree that the tempo snuff out generates is pretty insane and pretty hard to give up once we have tried it. Right? So I think so I think we can try this. And for the last slot, I almost want to say I want maybe a discard spell, because instead of the Terrasander, I
say no to the card. So I really don't like the card. I think it's kind of flexible, but on the other hand, it's very inefficient. So if you see it as a removal spell for a creature, you have to pay 4 mana. That's 1 mana, at least 1 mana too much in my perspective.
At least.
And I think there are other also flexible options like Assassin's Trophy. The advantage of the card that it exiles the artifact. So especially against matchups like Painter or against the One Ring, you can exile the card and they can't get it back, or it gets rid of the battlefield.
I think the last card has to be a creature, honestly. I think it has to be or a creature or a discard. Maybe it can be the Mesmeric Fiend. this could be an option. Mesmeric Fiend, I've been torn late. It's not a card I've loved, but for example, I know Mats likes it a lot, and Newton also has been liking it.
I think you could also play.
Or a Cabal Therapy
if you
could
play-
be.
If you play 3 Bowmasters, playing something like Grist in a sideboard. I know Newton doesn't like to have sideboard cards for control, but I think Grist makes a lot of sense in a lot of matchups, and it gets better with Bowmaster. I can see that as being a slot as well.
Yeah, this also maps pretty neat, because we could do. This is 7. So against Delver, we could go 5, 6, and maybe we probably can cut one Dismember.
I'm not sure if you need the Moxus versus Delver. Like they're good, but they also aren't needed. So it's
maybe one more Mox and keep all the removal.
Yeah, I think I would rather do that.
Okay. For me, this works as a list that we can keep building, or probably the next session we can just play it and get a feel. Do you agree with the last selection, Jörg? Probably not.
Not really. So I don't really like the third Grist, because I think it's a bit too clunky, and so it's good to have access to the card, especially with the Green Sun Zenith, and rarer occasions with the Fiend Artisan, because you already have to spend a creature to sacrifice for the Fiend Artisan, and then there aren't that many on the battlefield that you can sacrifice for the Grist if you need to sacrifice, if you handle a creature. I think it's a bit clunky, and also one disadvantage of Grist is it used to be a house against all the control decks in the past, but then Minsk and Boo was released. Now 4th Elangias was released. So they are, even Orcish Bowmaster is somehow a good answer for the Grist. So that could be an option to play more of it. But I think 2 is set in the main deck, and I don't really see the need of the third one.
So, for what it's worth, both lists from Rodney and Diego we're running 3 Grist. Just I just want to say it. I see what you mean. If the main reason is to combat control, I agree. Grist is good, but it's not as good as it used to be. And especially now with they are adding more leyline bindings and this kind of stuff. But right. Then why would you play in the 15th sideboard slot? I was thinking some discard because I wanted to exploit the best turn 1 possible, which is turn 1 Mana Dork or turn 1 Reclaimer and turn 1 Thought discard. This would be for me the dream sequence, but I don't know how you guys feel about it.
So I would either play a discard spell or card like Mesmeric Fiend or Cabal Therapy, especially with a higher amount of Bowmasters. I tend to play Therapy, or at least a kind of combo interaction. So we could also play Garrock instead, or maybe even a Miser's Mindbreak Trap, not really sure about, or like a single Chalice of the Void. So I would more likely play a interaction spell against combo. And also a card I really liked in the past was the one-off Opposition Agent in the sideboard. Especially it's a good hate bear against those green decks, and it's also a good way to get an advantage in the kind of mirror matches.
The problem right now is, we talked about this, is the Besiege book. It's not stopping Besiege right now, so This, yeah, I could see that because it's a. I said the last card why I wanted to be a creature, but it's also good against combo. Okay, so let's get my thoughts in order and put it somewhere visually. So last card we're thinking about is either one therapy, either one opposition agent, and Matt also suggested the Grest.
The main reason I suggested the Grist was just to take advantage of the Bowmaster, so it could also be a therapy. I agree that Grist is clunky, but I also think Agent is clunky in the same way. And I haven't really...
Okay, then no, it's okay. This is enough arguments for me. So I'm okay not playing opposition agent if we're playing Dismember, because this means, and with this we can finish. I know it's been late. I'm sorry, guys, but let me just do some closing thoughts. Dismember can take Artisan, and the 2 Snuffouts all will help us on the early game. So between all this removal, we probably can. These 2 can help against the Artisan, and the Dismember can help against Snuff-Out can kill the area acceleration or the Reclaimers, and the Dismembers can kill maybe the Artisan or all the other meaningful target we cannot kill. And this way, by adding the Cabal Therapy, maybe we can exploit both the Chromox in the sideboard for the extra speed against the combo matchups and the Bowmasters. So, just in favor of that, do you agree doing like this? Our final sideboard?
I think therapy makes a lot of sense.
George?
I think that's a good add.
Yeah, not really sure about the 3-2 split, but I'm definitely sure that we should play at least like 5 discard spells. And the main reason for the discard spells over other options, in my opinion, is the wide range of flexibility you get off the card, because it works against almost all combo decks. And some cards like Gadoktik, for example, they don't really work always against Sneak and Show, because they can still show and tell the sneak attack into on the battlefield. And Gadoktik doesn't really work against Doomsday. So it is also a disadvantage because of the mana requirements of the Gadoktik can be a bit challenging sometimes if you draw it. So I think you get the widest coverage with the turn 1 interaction. So in most situations, especially after sideboarding, you exactly know which combo deck you play against, and then you can just name the worst card with the Cabal Therapy. And as Inigo explained earlier, if you miss with that, that usually means that you don't die next turn. And then in next turn, you should usually have a good way to interact with the opponent again, because you play a creature and you can sacrifice it.
Yeah, but if you are playing mod, remember that on a theoretical scenario, we can play turn 1 Cabal Therapy, turn 1 any CMC 1, and we can. I don't say this is the correct line, but you have the option to go turn 1 double discard.
Right.
So I think this is very valuable and a reason to do the 3-2 split. Or to try, at least to try. I don't say this is optimal list or anything. Yeah, it's just what we are thinking or testing or possibilities.
Regarding one fact, also regarding the it's probably a bit too late to talk about all of the sideboard plans against all of the different strategies. But I think we have to always keep in mind that we are playing against tempo decks.
Yeah.
And there are different sideboard plans against Death, Shadow, Grixis Tempo, and Scam. But what I wanted to point out, in my opinion, Pithing Needle isn't always a bad card to bring in, because sometimes you can interact with the troll. If you name the troll very early, they can't use it to search for land. And on the other hand, it also protects you from wasteland. So I think if in doubt, Pissing Needle isn't always the best card, that's sure, but
It's very
it is
universal, yeah. Yeah,
it's
very good.
universal, and it's also, in my opinion, at least a consideration to bring in against Grixis Tempo, for example, because with this list, we would have less cards to bring in probably with a higher impact.
Yeah.
But
Okay, this is this is another full topic to discuss. It will probably be so something that we can do maybe some other day if you guys are up to it. We can build the sideboard map together and discuss the options. I think this would be very interesting, at least for me and probably for anybody who tuned in today, because I think the three of us have so we have some common thoughts, but also some different approaches, and this is a very good way to learn and just share these opinions together. It makes us better players overall because we can see some lines or some, like for example, like Matt's idea to side in snuff out against the Stompy matchup. This was game changing for me personally. It was very good. And also, right now you have to bring in Snuff Out because of the Moxus deck. Remember this to stop the Sticker Goblin.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I think we wanna wrap it up with this. I want to thank you again. Shout out to my two guests, Georg and Mats. It was amazing to have you guys, and thank you for coming. So if we can schedule another similar Golgari Friday night would be amazing for me.
You could probably find a date. And thank you for having me.
Yeah. Okay,
yes, thank you as well. It was a pleasure to be with you, and also nice to meet you again, Mats, and was very helpful to get a more or deeper understanding into the different card choices. And it would be a cool idea if we can redo that on another Friday night. So we definitely should check if we can schedule that for the next weeks.
Yeah.
Thank you everybody who tuned in, and thank you Ku for the gifted. So this will be it for today, and see you.
Bye bye. Have a good night.
Okay, guys, we are off the live